Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have some very terrifying and creepy video clips along with some subscriber terrifying encounters. Before we get into those, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter and are appreciated. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? Guys, tonight I am going to hit you with some subscriber submissions out of two states on the East Coast, Vermont and Virginia. Vermont you wouldn't think would be a hot spot for Dogman, but it really is. Virginia, obviously, we know it is. And I've got some very terrifying encounters. A dogman kills a cow in Vermont, and a dogman and police officer go head to head in Virginia. Let's do it. Today's one and only Vermont subscriber submission. What's up, Jeff? My name is Ryan, not really, and I live in Poultney, Vermont. I'm 19 years old, and this is mine and my dad's dogman encounter. The year was 2016, July, hot as hell. I was 17 at the time, just graduated. Yes! I wanted to go swimming over in Dorset. There are these old slate quarries all over with the freshest, coolest, and clear water. So my dad and I jump in his pickup and we start the half-an-hour trip on Route 30. The trip was completely uneventful, and we pull up to the first small swimming hole. We jump out and notice that there's no one here. Weird, no one's here, I said with a kind of question. My dad replies, yeah, weird as can be, bud. This one swim hole is a pretty popular place for kids my age and some, and that's why it's weird. On top of it was at least 95 degrees out. So we walk up and I scream out, WTF, Dad, oh my God. There was a dead cow floating in the water. Well, that explains it, I say. My dad said, something's off. The cow's side was torn up and torn to shreds along with its neck. Sometimes a random cow will get loose and fall in one of these holes and drown. So, as we are looking at this carcass of the cow, we notice that there are tear marks, like what a bear does to a tree, 4 side-by-side gashes, and the neck was just torn right out. My dad is on the other side of the small swimming hole and sees a blood trail leading to the water and a huge dog/wolf or coyote track. When I say huge, it was about double the size of our handprints. My dad starts walking toward the truck to call the Vermont State Police and report this when crap really hits the fan. Across the road was a huge hayfield, and we see this figure running at us on 2 legs and fast. We could make out some features. This thing was at least 8 feet tall, and running fast it looked like a ragged wolf. It was about 200 yards from us and dropped to all 4s and stopped. It let out this loud, terrifying howl. I felt it in my chest. We jumped in the truck, crapping our pants and watching this dog monster. The next thing it does is turn back around and bounds back on all 4s to the woods. Turns and looks back at us, stands back up on its hind legs, and walks back into the woods. My dad looked at me and said, "I don't know what that was, and I do not want to find out. Let's get out of here." The whole way home, I looked out the window looking for this thing. I never saw it again or heard a howl like that. I hope this thing never finds me in the woods, because what it did to that cow, I can't imagine what it would do to a human. Please, everyone, stay out of the woods unless you have a gun. These things are real and really dangerous. Alright guys, now we had that quick little layover in Vermont. Let's head south to Virginia. Today's first Virginia subscriber, Dogman submission. Hey Jeff, I saw something that has left me in question. I live near the county airport in Lee County, Virginia, Flatwoods, which is located at the end of Jonesville, Virginia. At the time, it was around 8 p.m. I was heading to the gas station to pick up a tin of Grizzly. For those of you who don't know, it's a brand of snuff. Well, on occasion I smoke. As I had just crossed the bridge in front of my house, I went to flick the cigarette, and it came back into the car. I had to wait until I got to a turnoff to the airport before I could stop and find the burning cigarette. There are no streetlights in the area, just the airport beacon. The area is surrounded with a 10-foot chain-link fence with barbed wire. Across the top of this fence, I get out of the car and immediately I hear what I think is a coyote howling in the distance, which is normal for here. I continue to look for the cigarette that is somewhere in my car burning the interior when I start to hear commotion behind me. I think to myself, damn, coyotes are trying to sneak up on me. But it started to sound like one animal, but bigger than a coyote. The area behind the fence is nothing but small trees and brush for a quarter of a mile until you reach the end of the runway. So I couldn't see it until it got right up to the fence. I got back into the car just in case I was being stalked to keep from getting jumped by a pack of coyote. I turned off the interior dome light, and all I noticed behind the fence watching me was 2 amber-colored eyes. I heard a very deep growl, but I also felt it, as if the sound resonated into the car as it was still running. I didn't get a good look at it, but I did notice it looked like it had stood up just by watching its eye shine. Again, there are no streetlights, but judging by the size of the fence that I have stood by many times while watching planes take off, it looked to be close to 7 feet tall. I'm 6'2", and like I said, I've stood by that fence a lot. I went to turn the car around so that I could shine the lights on it for a better look, but as I was turning the car around, another vehicle passed by, and it was gone. Could have been a big coyote, but I had never seen one that big. I didn't hear any howls from it, nor have I seen or heard of anything like that in this area, except for one Dogman sighting in Keokee, Virginia, which is 30 minutes northeast towards the Appalachian Mountains from where I was. Any idea what I was looking at? I want to go back and look for prints. I know the airport owner very well, and I can get clearance into the area. I've hunted coyote and watched them before, but I've never had an encounter with one that big and with a growl that deep. And those eyes, never seen eyes like that. I want to add that I drove up the 1-mile road leading to the airport, and I didn't see anything but a Dodge truck with fogged windows. I had an idea of the reason, so I ignored the truck and drove back down the road, trying to find the animal, but I couldn't find anything. I used to hunt a lot back in the day before I gained a deep respect and love for nature and animals after protecting a fox den of pups from people who wanted to kill them. I'm a man that will absolutely not harm anything unless it was strictly for survival purposes now. When this thing made that terrifying growl, it was as if it was saying, "Hey buddy, I don't know you and you don't know me, but as long as you stick to your side of the fence, I'll stick to mine." This happened nearly a mile from my house. I haven't ever came across anything like that ever in my life, and I'd much prefer not to. It could have easily jerked me out of my car and tore me to shreds, but it chose not to. I want to know more about these creatures, but I don't think I want to be anywhere as close as I was that night. Can't say it was or wasn't a Dogman, but I can say it's the first I've ever experienced anything like that. You are welcome to share my story, but please don't use my real name. Just don't know how many there are out in this area, and I am getting concerned at how close this thing was setting up residence from where I live. Today's third encounter, second encounter from a Virginia subscriber. This encounter happened in Danville, Virginia, late summer. Hey Jeff, my name is not important and confidential due to me being a retired police officer, so here's my encounter. My day starts off normal enough, and I'm on day shift doing my patrol when I get a dispatch call from a disturbance. I arrive at the residence, and an older woman answers her door saying something took her dog, which was chained up at the time. I go out back and see the chain was a small chain due to the fact that her dog only weighed about 20 pounds. The chain was broken, so I go back to my patrol car and grab my shotgun out, and I walk the tree line. I enter the woods, and I first notice a smell of urine and wet dog. It smelled terrible. Next, I heard this crunching sound like someone was chewing on potato chips, but so much louder. I then see these reddish-orange eyes and this huge dog, jet black, eating the woman's dog whole. It sees me and it stands straight up on its hind legs and was a towering 7.5 to 8 feet in height. It had what looked like a lion's mane, a monstrous body that would have shamed a bodybuilder. It growled at me, baring its teeth, and takes a step towards me. I shot a warning shot, and it drops the torn carcass of the dog and steps to me again. Well, my next shot was right to the face. It lets out this roar and drops to all fours and starts running through the woods away from me. I must have gotten it in the eyes because it was running away and it was hitting trees. I go back to the woman's home and tell her that I couldn't find her dog, but I shot at a coyote and that's what must have taken her dog. I then go to the station and write it up. I write up my weapons discharge statement. And I tell my captain what had happened exactly. He looked at me and said, "You shot a coyote, and that's final." I retired shortly after and kept this buried in my memory till all of these encounters started to come out. Thank you for all you do, Jeff. Today's fourth subscriber submission, third Virginia subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I've got an encounter for you. Now I've only told a few people, including my wife, but she thinks I'm pulling her leg. This happened back in '79. I was living in Woodbridge, Virginia. I was 11 or 12 years old at the time. It was the summer, and I always snuck out almost every night riding my banana seat bike. sticking to the trails mostly. Now, at this point in my life, I had never seen a scary movie or heard any ghost stories, etc. But one night at about 1 to 3 in the morning, I was making my way through the woods coming up to the local shopping mall, the famous roller coaster trails. As I was leaving and going home, at the start of the trail I saw this big thing. At first it looked like it had horns on its head from the moonlight shining through the trees. The path was about 4 feet across, and it crossed it in one step. I skidded on my bike and fear came over me. My heart raced, I was shaking. I believe this creature heard me, and I made it to the light at the corner store. Stopped and looked back, and there it was, plain as day at the edge of the woods staring at me. It was black and gray, not much hair on its chest, super long arms, with what appeared to be long nails, and they looked very sharp. Teeth so long, even with its mouth closed, they came past its lower jaw. It just stood there, smelling the air. Its ears perked up, nose up in the air. I was probably 4.5 feet tall at the time, and it looked like I only came up to its waist. Then I turned around and booked it back to the front of the store, down Route 1, going 2 miles out of my way to get home. I pedaled as fast as I could, and from then on I did not go out at night in the woods by myself. The people I have told think I'm making it up. But for real, this thing I saw that night is forever burned in my head. Keep up the good work, Jeff. There's always great encounters out there. Take care. You can contact me if need be. Today's 5th subscriber submission, 4th Virginia subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, happy and blessed Easter. I hope you're having a wonderful day with your daughter and family. And I'll give this a shot, so here we go. Please know, my friend, that I am no writer. This being said, I'll try my best. In November of 1999, on a family farm I've hunted since I was old enough to stray and roam the hills and valleys with a single-cock repeater Daisy BB gun, and gained a working knowledge of guns and land at an early age of 8 years old. And in doing so, I chased everything from starling blackbirds to ground squirrels and woodchucks, anything that would give chase and offer a fun time. Also, while I was young, frolicking, I got cocky and overly brave, thinking as I got older each year that I was king and invincible with my valued hunting knife and pump pellet gun I'd graduated to by the age of 10, and quite accurate with it. On through the years deer hunting every year, never got serious about it till I was 15 and killed my first buck. At 17 years old, and this thus began the like a fever, trying every year to get my legal allotted amount, and many times getting close and harvesting many. I wasn't afraid of nothing in the mountains. I alone ruled them. I thought building pressure and air in my balloon like an opinion of myself. Now, looking back, I was foolish in unknowingly building the stage for a showdown for what would be my fall from grace, learning that I wasn't the self-promoted giver and taker I had bragged and boasted about. I had never seen anything that would, to me, present any kind of challenge or danger I thought would cause me harm from a coyote or bobcat, and even a black bear, as long as I held what I knowed could take a life. My first ever bought left-handed bolt gun, 300 Win Mag. Before I got serious, I traded up and bought the cheapest way to hunt. One day in 1999, during rifle season, I was hunting in the backside of the mountain, my honey hole. I'd hunted for years across the fence on neighboring woods. I got my yearly stand at 15 minutes before dawn, and got everything set up, my cousin at the base of the big oak, my scent killer spray on, made sure my gun was topped off and loaded and optic cover removed. Sat down and began watching and listening. At sunup, the usual shots started all around me, but mostly far away, for me down the bottom of the mountain in all the hollers and drawers. At around 7:17 in the morning, I started hearing something heading around the top of the ridge, around a couple 100 yards, sounding like a troop of elephants, and got close but continued out of hearing range to my right, never seeing what it was, giving it not much thought, assuming it was turkeys or hunters maybe. Around 9:15, I saw a doe and 2 fawns. They passed without busting me, or about 30 yards, but then the doe came busting down the hill after winding something other than me, fawns at her heels. 10 minutes later, a decent-sized 4-point came up the same trail. This was my chance. I brought my rifle up to my eye, finding the area behind the shoulder, hold my breath, and squeeze the trigger. Striking home, the deer was knocked sideways and ran maybe 15 yards, then expired. I gave it no time as I saw it fall, and it no longer was breathing. I approached my prize, and was grateful for any blessed harvest, and began dragging it uphill without dressing it. I had done that on the other side of the border fence. When I started pulling about 50 yards from where it fell, I heard something following the same trail the buck did before I shot it. By this time, from where I had moved, the animal had laurel and brush obstructing my sight. It sounded like what I had heard earlier, making a lot of noise and moving faster than I had heard it last time, breaking the brush and hard on its trail. I stopped and was watching with my rifle in hand. Then it stopped as well. And then I heard a bellow is what I called it, but nothing I had ever heard before, almost like a dull, loud hum. Then I heard an explosion of air, and Jeff, it sounded like an air tank when the valve is slowly opened, then let go real fast, hard turn. This time I was getting nervous, and I pulled my gun back up to the eye and began looking in my scope. I finally see this brownish-like coat with black blotches standing an estimated 3.5 feet at its shoulders, but the patch about a foot across and squared. The animal I thought was possibly a spotted bear or a big stray dog. I began dragging again, and more ferocity this time, and I got about 40 feet. Then an unnatural, breathtaking howl rung out, and I stopped immediately, taking this in and freezing for a moment in time, trying to assess the situation, trying to grasp that Thor-like attitude I had, but it was vacant and non-existent. I was able to breathe, and I turned toward the sound and slowly lifted my gun and began spotting, but found it right off. A black figure with brown patches, and saw a large snout sniffing. On the gums, lifting and lowering, and given light to yellow stained, very long canines. And one tall ear turned my way as the rest of its face covered with leaves. I was fear-struck, not knowing what to do. Shoot this animal or just keep dragging my kill, ignoring what I felt was a death on a march. I waited to see what it was going to do. When I saw the upper body stretching like an extended in the upper part of the covered canopy and branches, I know it was not a normal animal, or an animal at all. I gripped my gun and dropped the rope hooked to my deer and strapped the gun to my shoulder and left quickly, leaving my kill. I wanted no part of this encounter or to escalate, and left literally running toward the border fence. And my 265-pound ass leaped the 3-strand, 3-foot-tall barbed wire fence. Reaching our property, I stopped, resting, getting my breath. After around 20 or so minutes, I called my friend on the radio, asking him to get to me fast. Arriving, he could tell I was badly shaken. He had heard it too. We started talking. I explained all I had seen and heard, and we felt it best to leave and return later after thinking this out. After a few hours, around 2 p.m., we returned with backup, including my stepdad and my friend's dad in tow. We began walking out toward the place very cautiously, and myself in the back, bringing up the rear. trading my rifle in 300 Win Mag for my 12-gauge Mossberg loaded with double-aught and slugs. We moved as a unit, coming upon the deer still lying there where I had left it. Only difference, it looked like it had been moved about 25 feet or so back down the hill, and all kinds of leaves and small needle high brush torn up and scattered all around the carcass, and an overwhelming smell of urine and crap. Jeff, it stank so bad our eyes were watering. After checking the kill, it was as if I had left it. I grabbed the rope and we slowly moved all together back up the ridge, with me in the middle, my dad in back, swapping out. And I took the rear, he drug. Getting toward the border fence about 7 feet, there was a hickory tree. About 8 feet up was a fresh claw mark straight up and down with 4 cuts at least a quarter of an inch deep. And it wasn't there when we went back, as you face the tree when you cross the fence. We left quickly. I was made fun of and laughed at by the 2 dads till they saw the mark. From that encounter I began researching this off and on till another run-in some years later, where it got hairier and scarier. That's another story, but I'd conclude that it was a werewolf in the flesh, and after a month after my encounter, discovered the brief description of Dogman and gave it light, resembled what I saw. I dedicated myself, my spare time, to learning all I can, and though coming out less brave, but more educated and better armed. Well, Jeff, here's my first encounter. Please forgive my spelling and vocabulary. Your friend DJ. Second email, same subscriber. Hey Jeff, buddy, it's DJ. I hope you are well. Here is my second encounter. I had to check my other source and made sure everything I saw and experienced was on the level with my friend who was with me at the time. So here goes, as previous, forgive the spelling or mistakes as I'm no writer. Jeff, off we go. This happened some years later of my first run-in in the year 99. This experience was in late September, as myself, an experienced hunting friend, co-worker, we had been small game hunting that month for squirrel, but had noticed a drastic reduction in not just the numbers, but also grouse and turkey, though not in season this early in the year. We still would have crossed tracks with this wildlife way before, and hadn't. That alone led us to question the environment and its goings-on around us. Big D, nicknamed for Daniel, was especially vibrant, live spirit in the outdoors, living every moment in the outdoors at its most and fullest, like me. Every trip only leading to no more than 2 squirrels harvested. Every other trip and sighting some days as 0 was building the question, what, why, where, and if scenario. We had began troubleshooting our current dilemma after the 3rd trip. He'd been told and versed on the previous experience with what I learned later was a Dogman or equivalent to. So poked fun and called me, quote, Sasha, the European fable of the boy who cried wolf, unquote. Every couple of outings, whether hunting or fishing, even hiking. But unbeknownst to Big D, on myself, his day was coming, as the second as well. By this time, the 3rd week of season, we had guessed a conclusion was drawn. It was a pack of coyotes in the local area responsible for the reduction of the small and big game in the area of Tazewell County, where the farm was located. We had been planning on how and if we could do to trim the tide, an onslaught of virtual nature's bounty, ripping it from legal human hunters, until we had took enough and put a plan into motion to try as well-trained unit to dispose of some of these critters, though in the back of my mind worrying what if, and then just as quick dismissing the thought, like a belch and excuse me motion. Thus the day had come. It was just a few days later until the first week of archery season opener, and we were geared up by this time, gathering up 2 spotlights and night filter for the lens reddish, not to scare or alert the predators, also a vital scent killing spray, and wildlife in distress collar. We had made the 45-minute trip from my house to meet him, and we'd finished the rest of the trip together. As soon as I pulled up, he threw his gear in the back seat, sat down saying, "You ready, Sasha?" A quick reply, "F you, butthole." Then we pulled out, getting to the farm around 7 p.m., leaving us about 20 minutes to get set up at the end of the woods as the open meadows come to an abrupt end. Getting all the equipment in place, loudspeakers set, system all guns loaded, sidearms strapped. It was 7:45, completely dark, so D hit the cordless remote, activating the squealing rabbit distress call, with me turning on the rechargeable 500,000 candle-powered spotlight every 4 to 7 minutes. After an hour passed, and no action except coyotes hollering about 3/4 of a mile, couple farms away was the only response. The raccoon went bounding down out of the woods just then, and I mean hauling friggin' chicken. To our surprise, we looked at each other, and I spoke, saying, "What the hell?" And D replied, "Back damn." And raccoons moving like they're being chased by a horny RuPaul. Once we cleared, we started talking. What made that move like that? And right then, maybe 10 minutes had passed, I heard that damn dreaded sound like the otherworldly moan. Hearing it just one other previous time in my life a few years earlier. Never ever hoping or thinking, nor wanting to hear that hellish sound again. Daniel, like me, froze, not moving a millisecond of an inch. As my small headlamp provided just enough light to see him beside me, he not even blinking at that moment in time. It was by the sound around 400 yards up the ridgeline that led down the draw through the holler to the open pasture. As we were set up, we began scrambling, readying for whatever was coming, and coming it was. Even at that long way distance, we could still hear it like it was just a few yards away, thanks to the windless clear night. He was asking me what the hell it was while checking his weapon, a trusted 44 stainless laminate lever action, and I replied, "Hey, I'm Sasha, butthole, remember," trying to provide a little bit of levitivity in this scary, sweating, heart-pounding moment. D snickered as he swung the lever shut on his gun, watching him grab and check his Glock 20 10mm. For those of you who don't know, that model Glock is the most powerful auto available. In semi-auto, form aside for the famous iconic Desert Eagle, and rivals even it in some of its magnum forms in shrill power and penetration. That after this night purchased the very model in that not so far future. I had already bolted my 260 Remington and felt my Ruger 357 GP100 on my belt, sounding like a fast approaching, out of control ATV, smashing and uprooting whatever was in its path. All of a sudden we heard the border fence crack and stretch. Knowing only one known creature could possibly scale barbed wire was a black bear, or the thing I had run into once. The wire squeaked again, followed by a thump like something jumping and landing with both feet. By this time, D was scared white like me. Then by now, it was about less than 150 yards from us. I hit the light, together scanning the meadow. The light hit a set of eyes around 4 feet off the ground, but it was bouncing up and down. Then it went up another couple of feet. We guessed it quickly removed the red lens filter, giving us white light. "Oh my God," D said, along with my Holy Mary Mother of God. I knowed down deep, silently praying, not for the approaching being, not to be my nightmare incarnate. But, oh well, here it stood. Those eyes, those damn psychotic, soul-draining, glowing, colored pupils, throwing up his rifle, taking aim, and I watched his trigger finger tighten. I put my hand fast by, ever so easily, on his hammer, holding and telling him, "Don't," with D saying, "What are you, crazy?" replying, "No, but don't shoot if there's no need." He slowly let the hammer down while sweat dripping from his forehead, standing his gun on his leg. We stood watching it, noticing its shaped upper torso coming down, meeting two hawked legs. Like a dog, slim but still defined, even at its distance, him holding the light, my turn with the binos, then handed off. Again it ran another 70 plus yards, cutting to the left, its right butt still blaring towards us. As he grabbed his gun, suddenly dropped the spotlight as both of our headlamps lit it up. Both aimed our guns at it. I clicked my safety off. Suddenly it looked up dead at us. Like drawing back, we heard a sound like a tire valve blowing out, losing air. Then pause, and then releasing a window-shattering howl. That made our buttholes draw up so tight they'd write Egyptian hieroglyphs. Then he fired at its feet, blowing a cloud of sod and a cow biscuit, making its rump leap straight 3 feet in the air. When it hit back down, the legs moving like a scattered bobcat, faster than everything we had ever seen. As it ran, I fired over it about 4 feet over its head. It kicked into gear and leapt the fence and was gone. Still standing, we turned towards each other, and Big D letting out a big deep breath, saying, "Well now, I not just believe you, but saw my own reckoning." Standing around 5 minutes passed as my heart quit pounding and my ears said, "Well, since you dubbed me Sasha, who cried wolf, you are now da Hood." He said, "What the hell does that mean?" I replied, "Little Red Riding Hood with the red cape. Consider that name da Hood as your graduating wolf in the hood experience that you have seen, saw, and lived to tell about." Then he just got teary-eyed, as I did, saying, "I never doubt you again," and asked, "DJ, how can I ever hunt again, day or night?" I told him, as I put my hand on his shoulder, "God's good time, one day soon, hunt by hunt." Picking up our courage, strewn on the ground with our stuff, leaving the calling system till daylight, we left, slowly loading up all the gear and hauling our southern redneck ass out of there, scared but alive and blessed at the same time. Well, Jeff, that's a wrap, as they say. I got some others told to me by my friends whose relatives have experienced in the past. If you want me to try and get those together, let me know. Have a blessed evening. Your friend DJ. He has since been on the channel and shared, well, those encounters with us, and some other things that have gone on in Tazewell. DJ's a good friend of the channel. Not the best writer. Definitely not the best writer. I'm going to have to go and sit down and rewrite those. But if there's anything ever happening in Virginia, DJ is the man that lets me know. Ironically enough, where he lives is where they found the body of the gentleman who disappeared last year in the culvert, which I did an upload about. I actually called the police station for those of you who didn't hear that one. I'm still gonna stay on top of it. There's been no new news, but hopefully I can get something for y'all. No, I'm even talking like him. Jeez, I'm crow. Today's 6th subscriber submission, 5th Virginia subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I've been hesitant about sharing this encounter with you because it's my 12-year-old daughter's and she still has nightmares about it 2 years later. So here goes. It was 2016 and Tia is in Virginia visiting my parents, her grandparents, and other family members. She's outside playing with her cousin, who is the same age as Tia. And her cousin, Chantal, gets bored of playing with the chickens in the coop. Tia, let's go for a walk on the trails in the woods. She tells her cousin okay, but not too far. I don't want to get lost or in trouble. Her cousin says it'll be fine, and they start their little hike. They walk for about 10 minutes and are pretty deep into the woods. Tia stops and looks at her cousin and asks her, "Do you smell that bad smell?" Her cousin says, "Yeah." And they hear a noise coming toward them. The girls turn around and start to head back home. They get about 2 minutes from the house and they hear a loud snapping. The girls turn around and see what had been behind them. Tia freezes in fear and Chantal screams and turns and starts running. Tia is alone and scared stiff, so frightened my baby wet herself. What she saw is a monster of a creature. It was a giant dog standing on its hind legs. Long muscular arms, big human-like hands with long nails, strange bent legs, pointed ears, and burning bright red eyes. It next curled its lips and showed her its huge teeth with a low growl and twitching ears. The dogman then starts walking toward her. Seconds later, my father, her granddad, calls out behind her. The creature growls and quietly. Tia said it kind of smiled at me, Mama, and it turned and ran back into the woods. Her granddad hugged her and asked her, "Are you okay?" and brings her back to the house. When she sees Chantal, Tia asks, "Why did you leave me?" "Tia, I didn't. I yelled at you to come on. And you didn't, so I ran home to get Papa." Tia will not go into the woods and has nightmares every night, still 2 years later. Today's 7th subscriber submission, 6th Virginia subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I really enjoy your show. None of my experiences were traumatizing, as most of your stories seem to be, but I've definitely had 2 experiences, and a handful of others seemingly related. I grew up in the mountains of Virginia. I spent so much of my life outdoors that I used to say I slept more in the forest than my house. Now that I'm older, that isn't as true as it was 20 years ago. Back in the 80s and 90s, you could sleep on the ground in the woods with no worries. I used to camp with only a hammock and a tarp to keep the rain off of me. Sometimes I would just go and sleep in a sleeping bag on the ground with no tarp at all. However, that has changed since the turn of the millennium. There are predators in the forest now that weren't there when I was a kid. Oh, they were, but... Encounter 1. Back in '98, I had purchased 400 acres of land in a remote part of Virginia. I intended to divide it into a subdivision, which I eventually did. When I first purchased the land, there was an old farmhouse, probably built in 1910 or so, that I intended on fixing. But the windows were all busted out, so I used the old mill on the property as my sleeping quarters while I fixed up the house. This mill was made of oak board. I secured it with a chain and padlock on the door. This mill was so sturdy that the roof was a solid layer of oak board with metal atop of it. At the south end, there's a cheap addition where the roof was just sheet metal nailed to some rafters spaced about 2 feet apart. The building was about 15 feet high at the peak. There was an old maple tree growing next to it with a long branch that went over about half the roof. I used to cook chicken for dinner and toss the bones out the mill for the cats. Something, I don't know what, would come after dark and steal the bones from the cats. I could hear it growl, and then I could hear it crunching the bones up. I did find a track of a large feline or canine in the mud behind the barn once, but I never confirmed what the creature was. Back then I had a Browning high-powered 9mm pistol in addition to a couple of other weapons. One night, about 2 in the morning, I was awakened by a sound of heavy footsteps on the roof above me. I didn't know about Dogman or Sasquatch, so I figured, hey, it's a mountain lion. Today I know that it was unlikely to have been a cougar. At the time, I felt certain that it wanted to kill me. I don't know how I knew it, I just did. I was wearing nothing but my boxer shorts, and hearing steps on the roof above me made me break out in a cold sweat. I got up as silently as possible and grabbed my pistol, but I was still barefoot in my boxers. I was being stalked, but I was stalking the stalker quietly underneath it as it walked on my roof. I heard the thing walking southward, so I walked underneath it, barefoot and silent, until it went on top of the extension, the section with only a thin layer of metal with no boards. I heard it jump to the ground, and then after a few seconds, it jumped back to the top of the roof peak, which is about 15 feet high. At that point, I concluded it must have been a mountain lion or something to be able to jump that high. I felt very strongly that whatever it was wanted to eat me. I was standing directly underneath it. I waited to hear the footsteps, and when I did, I unloaded 10 out of 12 rounds of my magazine straight through the thin metal roof above me. I think I scored a direct hit, if not 5 or 6. Whatever it was fell on the roof with a loud crash. Then I heard a sound like fingernails on chalkboard as it slid off the roof. Eek! There was a thump as it hit the ground just outside the door. I was tempted to open the door and finish it off, but I thought better of it. I waited for daylight. In the morning, there was nothing there. That's the first encounter. Today, I do not believe it was a mountain lion, but I never saw the beast, so I don't know what it was for certain. My second encounter. In the years since, I have lived in a few different places with lots of forest nearby. While walking around in the woods, I have twice seen large trees spontaneously fall over near me on a windless day. One of them was a pine tree that was 24 inches thick at the base with no rot. I suspect that it was a Sasquatch, warning me away. I moved to a different part of the mountains of Virginia, and I rented a house on 500 acres of land that was separated from the road by a river on one side and the mountain on the back side. To get to my house, I had to either drive 100 yards through a river or walk over a swinging bridge. I loved it. My neighbors there kept seeing what they would call a black panther. He pronounced it painther. One time I was hauling a load of firewood I had cut on the property to help a family that needed it. I crossed the river and pulled up the road. As I got to the place on the road opposite my house, there was a woman standing on the side of the road looking at my house with binoculars. I thought for sure she was the feds. I pulled over and walked up to her and asked her what she was doing. She said she saw what she thought was a bear walking across the field, but it then jumped over the fence and went into the backyard of your house, which is my house. She concluded it was a panther instead of a bear. I've heard tree knocks out in my yard at night, and once there was something vocalizing on the ridgeline outside of my house. I tried intimidating it and calling back. It kept vocalizing for 20 minutes more. Once my friend and I were on a camping trip in the same river. We found a cave high up on a cliff face overlooking the river. We checked it out and found some old cave carvings, including one that was in Greek. We ended up camping in the woods just opposite the river from the cave. I slept in my hammock. Unfortunately, I snore when I sleep, and pretty loud. My friend was kept awake by it. He said at some point in the night something that he assumed was a bear came near me and was growling at me as I snored. I never woke up. Yeah, my snoring is so annoying, even a Dogman complains about it. 22 years later, after the first encounter, I live in a house in the forest in the middle of Tennessee, not far from the LBL, Dogman Central. Periodically, I hear loud thumps on the roof at night. It reminds me of the night in the mill back on the old days. I've even put trail cams up there on the chimney, but I don't have any evidence yet. One night, the thumps on the roof woke me up at 3 in the morning, so I went out to the front porch to listen. The porch is covered by a roof, so it wasn't like being completely outside. I heard it moving twice, but I couldn't see it. The second time I heard it move toward me, it started sniffing me out loudly, just like a dog would. About that time, a weird effect came over me. It was like there was static in my brain, kind of like a old TV turning to a non-station. I wasn't scared, but I decided that it would be prudent time to go back inside, so I did. I can't prove that Dogman or Sasquatch exist, but there is something out here, and it enjoys messing with people at night. That I do know. Tonight's final Virginia subscriber submission. Jeff, my name is not important. What is important is what happened to me a couple years back. So I'm out on a small fishing boat on a small lake in Virginia. I'm about 20 to 30 feet off the shore, and I hear some branches breaking and commotion in the tree line. I see some movement, and all of a sudden this huge creature comes walking out. It's a massive, half dog, half man thing. It just stands there staring at me with these orange eyes. It looked just like a man German shepherd, pointed ears and all. I'm so afraid, and I start my boat engine and get out of the area. I've never seen it again and never want to.
And there you have it, folks. Today's upload. I do hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a chance and a place to share our experiences and theories, judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. That is because of all of you. I do appreciate that. Thank you. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.